In the first episode, we examine the serpent, consistent reports of specific non physical intelligence across cultures that had no contact. In the second episode, we looked at the Codex Gigas, how medieval consciousness workers documented operational protocols for managing these encounters. Today, we're going deeper into the classification systems. Because here's what most people don't understand about medieval grimoires. They're not spell books for summoning demons to do your bidding. They're field guides, taxonomies, classification systems for different types of non physical intelligence with specific protocols for each type, like a survival manual for dangerous terrain. You don't categorize bears, wolves, and snakes because you want to control them. You categorize them so you know what you're dealing with when you encounter one, so you know which approaches work and which get you killed. Medieval consciousness workers operated in territories where non-physical intelligence was encountered regularly through ritual work, threshold states, illness, death transitions, mental crisis. They needed to know, what is this? What does it want? How do I navigate this safely? What protocols apply? The grimoires document centuries of empirical observation, different entity types, different characteristics, different interaction protocols. This isn't superstition, it's phenomenological research. And the classification systems are surprisingly sophisticated. I'm Amy Rossi. This is the Void Experiment. Let's examine what they documented. Part 1. The major classification systems. Medieval grimoires don't agree on everything, but across different texts, different traditions, different centuries, consistent patterns emerge. The Lemegeton, also called the Lesser Key of Solomon, from the 17th century, catalogs 72 entities, not 72 demons. 72 distinct non-physical intelligences with specific characteristics, specific expertise, specific interaction requirements. Some provide knowledge, some manipulate material reality, some offer protection, some are explicitly adversarial. Each entry includes the entity's name, its seal or sigil, its rank or classification, what it can teach or provide, and the specific protocol for interaction. This is taxonomic documentation. The Sworn Book of Honorius, 13th century, uses different classification: spirits of air, fire, water, earth, celestial versus infernal, bound versus free, allied versus adversarial. The Book of Abramelin, 14th to 15th century, distinguishes between your holy guardian angel, unified higher intelligence, and everything else, which it categorizes as potentially deceptive or fragmentary. The Heptameron, 16th century, organizes entities by planetary correspondence: solar entities, lunar entities, mercurial entities, different intelligence types associated with different planetary forces, different frameworks, but all recognize the same core principle. Non-physical intelligence is not monolithic. There are types, classifications, hierarchies, specializations, and different types require different approaches. Think about this. We don't call all biological organisms life and interact with them identically. We recognize bacteria, plants, insects, mammals, different kingdoms, different characteristics, different protocols. Medieval consciousness workers applied the same discriminating approach to non-physical intelligence. Not all entities are demons. Not all are angels. Not all are helpful. Not all are hostile. You need to know what you're dealing with. Part 2. The classification criteria. So how did they classify? What were the distinguishing characteristics? First, origin or allegiance. Where does this intelligence come from? What realm does it inhabit? Celestial entities, what we might call angels or higher order intelligence, operate from unified, integrated states. They're described as radiant, clear, truthful. They don't fragment. They don't deceive. They serve coherence. Infernal entities, what grimoires call demons or adversarial spirits, operate from fragmented, dissolving states. They're described as shifting, contradictory, deceptive. They serve entropy, confusion, disintegration. Elemental entities, spirits of nature, place, or element, are described as neutral, not good or evil. They have their own agendas. Some can be allied with, some should be avoided, some can be negotiated with. This isn't moral judgment, it's description of operational characteristics. Does this entity unify or fragment? Does it clarify or confuse? Does it integrate or dissolve? Second, power or rank. Grimoires describe hierarchies: kings, dukes, princes, earls, presidents, knights. This isn't medieval social structure projected onto spirits. It's recognition that non-physical intelligences have different degrees of power, influence, and autonomy. Some entities can act independently. Some are bound by higher authorities. Some command lesser entities. Some serve greater ones. Knowing an entity's rank tells you, can I command this directly, or do I need authorization from something higher? What level of protection do I need? If you encounter a king-level entity unprepared, you're in dangerous territory. If you encounter a servant-level entity with proper authority, it's manageable. Third, specialty or domain. Different entities have different expertise. The grimoires document this meticulously. Some entities provide knowledge of hidden things. Some manipulate material circumstances. Some offer protection. Some teach specific skills. Some cause illness or misfortune. Some guard thresholds. The Lemegeton documents this systematically. Bael provides invisibility, teaches cunning. Agares teaches languages, causes earthquakes. Vasago reveals hidden things, prophetic knowledge. Samigina teaches liberal sciences, retrieves the dead temporarily. This reads like a database: entity name, function, specialty. Why? Because if you're seeking specific knowledge or outcome, you need to know which type of intelligence deals with that domain. You don't ask a Mars entity for lunar knowledge. You don't ask a Saturn entity for Venus results. Different intelligences, different domains. Fourth, interaction protocol. This is where it gets practically important. Some entities respond to command. You invoke higher authority, state their name, demand compliance. Some require negotiation. You offer something in exchange for service. Some need binding. You trap them in specific geometric forms using seals and circles. Some should never be engaged directly. You only interact through protective intermediaries. The grimoires document which protocol applies to which entity type. Getting this wrong is dangerous. Trying to command an entity that requires negotiation pisses it off. Trying to negotiate with an entity that only responds to authority gives it leverage. Medieval consciousness workers needed this information because they were operating in these territories regularly. These weren't theoretical classifications. These were survival protocols. Part 3. Modern Parallels. Now here's where it gets interesting for modern understanding. We don't use the language of grimoires today. We use psychological terminology, but the patterns are strikingly similar. Modern psychology recognizes internal family systems therapy documents multiple subpersonalities within one person: protectors, exiles, managers, firefighters, different parts with different agendas, some helpful, some stuck in trauma responses, some actively self-sabotaging. Sound familiar? Different entities within one system requiring different interaction protocols. Dissociative identity disorder describes distinct personality states that take executive control, each with its own memory, preferences, behaviors, sometimes cooperative, sometimes adversarial, sometimes unaware of each other. Medieval grimoires would call these possessing entities or fragmentary spirits. Different language, similar phenomenology. Intrusive thoughts in OCD feel external, alien, unwanted. Patients describe them as not me. The thoughts have their own agenda, their own logic, their own persistence. Grimoires would classify these as minor adversarial entities that require specific banishing protocols. Hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, experiences at the threshold between waking and sleeping, consistently include encounters with presences, beings, entities, shadow figures, seated creatures, pressing weight, distinct intelligence. Medieval consciousness workers called these threshold guardians or liminal entities. Modern science calls them sleep paralysis hallucinations. Different framework, same experience. DMT entity encounters documented by researchers show consistent patterns. Intelligent beings, often described as insectoid or geometric, sometimes benevolent, sometimes indifferent, sometimes seeming to test or teach. Highly consistent reports across subjects. Medieval consciousness workers would recognize these as transdimensional intelligence accessed through altered states. I'm not saying these are real in some objective physical sense. I'm saying human consciousness consistently generates or encounters phenomena that feel like distinct external intelligence. And there are systematic patterns to these phenomena. Medieval grimoires documented those patterns and developed protocols for managing them. Modern psychology documents those patterns and develops different protocols. The question isn't, do entities exist objectively? The question is, are classification systems and protocols useful for navigating consciousness? States where these phenomena occur? Empirically, yes. Both medieval and modern frameworks provide operational value. Part 4. Practical application. So what does this mean practically? If you've had experiences with what feel like external presences, intrusive thoughts that don't seem like you, or encounters in altered states, medieval classification systems offer a framework for understanding and navigating those experiences. Step 1. Classify what you're dealing with. Does it unify or fragment your consciousness? Does it provide clarity or create confusion? Does it serve your coherence or your dissolution? This tells you allied, neutral, or adversarial. Step 2, identify its domain. What area of your consciousness or life does it affect? Thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, behaviors, sleep, creativity, fear, desire? This tells you what type of intelligence and what protocols might apply. Step 3, choose interaction protocol. If it's fragmentary or adversarial, banish it. Don't engage. Use protective protocols. Command it to leave under higher authority, whether that's your integrated self, your values, or whatever you consider higher order. If it's neutral but intrusive, negotiate boundaries. Acknowledge its presence without giving it control. You may exist, but you don't direct my behavior. If it's aligned and helpful, integrate it. This might be part of yourself that's been exiled, a resource that's been unconscious. Bring it into conscious relationship. If you're unsure, don't engage directly. Create protective boundaries first. Get clear on your own authority before interacting with unknown intelligence. Medieval grimoires emphasized, never summon what you can't control. Never invoke what you don't understand. Never engage without protection. Modern psychology says something similar. Don't repress parts of yourself, but don't be controlled by them either. Develop ego strength before exploring shadow. Create therapeutic container before processing trauma. Different language, same wisdom. If you're operating in threshold states, through meditation, psychedelics, sleep disruption, crisis, grief, creative flow, you're in territory where these phenomena occur. Having a classification system helps you navigate instead of being overwhelmed. The grimoires aren't giving you power over demons. They're giving you frameworks for understanding consciousness states where things get strange. And that's useful knowledge. This is the Void Experiment, where we explore consciousness at the edge of form. Medieval grimoires aren't spellbooks for controlling demons. They're consciousness operations manuals, documenting centuries of empirical observation about non-physical intelligence. Different types, different characteristics, different protocols, not superstition, systematic documentation, and surprisingly relevant for modern consciousness exploration. In future episodes, we'll examine specific entity seals and sigils, what they actually do, and why geometric forms matter. The Sworn Book of Honorius protocols in detail, step-by-step procedures for consciousness work. DMT entity encounters and how they map to grimoire classifications. How to build protective protocols for your own consciousness exploration. Practical techniques from medieval and modern frameworks. If you're navigating altered states, if you've encountered things that feel like external intelligence, if you want frameworks for understanding consciousness at its edges, subscribe. Next week, why geometric forms contain consciousness and what grimoire seals actually do. I'm Amy Rossi. Welcome to the Void. The monks documented the territory. Now we're learning to read their maps.